Minecraft is a pretty simple game. On the surface, anyway. You mine blocks and place them back down somewhere else. Or you convert those blocks into items, convert those back into different types of blocks and place those down somewhere. Or you kill mobs to obtain items and experience to get stronger weapons, to kill the most powerful bosses and, eventually, mine blocks a little faster. We're all pretty familiar with these mechanics I just showed, right? I mean, a large part of Minecraft's player base is comprised of young children, so playing and beating the game can't be that complex, right? Well, that's true. You could play through the entire game and kill the final boss without ever being aware of the deeper levels of Minecraft's mechanics. But let's ask ourselves, what's the point of even playing Minecraft if you don't know how to construct an automatic item elevator, a sorting system, or construct a highly advanced communications network? You all know how to do that, right? Well, in case you don't, you've come to the right video, because in this video I will be discussing the most complex blocks of Minecraft. In case you've ever seen a massive redstone machine or played a Minecraft map, most of the blocks we're going to be talking about today are probably in large parts responsible for the fact that those things even work. And then there are even one or two blocks on this list where almost nobody seems to understand how they work exactly. So let's not waste any time and get right into this video. Number 5. The hopper. Ah yes, the hopper. Even if you're not a hardcore redstone engineer, you're probably at least vaguely familiar with this block, since it is a core part of many of the most useful redstone contraptions. Put plainly, a hopper has the ability to move items between different containers and among themselves. They can also automatically pick up items in their direct vicinity. This already makes them incredibly useful for collecting loot from fallen mobs. However, what makes this block so complex is that it has so many hidden features that the game doesn't tell you. Yeah, fun fact, I was researching for this segment of the video and I found this chart on the wiki, which basically details under what conditions a hopper does or does not transfer a certain item that it receives. I think the fact that such a chart was even made is enough to qualify this block for the video. I don't even understand half the words used here. Let's start with a simple hidden feature of the hopper. When you power a hopper with a redstone signal, it becomes locked, as they call it, and can no longer pick up items or pass them on to another container, even when connected properly. This one is not too useful in and of itself, though I was surprised to find out that this feature affects horizontal and vertical hopper chains differently, as in a vertical chain, 2 hoppers actually have to be locked for the chain to be disrupted. If you only lock one, it will just keep going, due to some stuff with the game tick or something. But now on to the exciting stuff. How do you use hoppers to make a storage system? How do you filter items? How can you pull off everything your favorite YouTubers accomplish with seemingly no effort? Well, for that, you need to use the hopper to build something known as an item sorter. This is what it looks like. Not very complicated, it seems, but there's actually a lot going on here. So, first things first. Within the hopper at the top, we have at the far left the item that we want to sort, and then the rest of the hopper is filled with one of just a filler item. That's very important. Then, whenever we put a stack of the item that we want into the system, as you can see, it's gonna get filtered out and the bottom chest fills up with amethyst. But why is this happening? You know, why don't these items here just get pulled down as well? Well, it's actually due to some complex interplay of the locking feature we just discussed, as well as some things mentioned in that complex graph from before. First of all, the items in this top hopper aren't being sucked out right now, because both of these hoppers here are locked due to this redstone torch at the bottom. Still following? Good, because it's about to get real complex really quick. We then put amethyst into the system. Since there is already amethyst sitting in the top hopper, it will get intercepted by the top hopper. Remember, a locked hopper may not be able to pass on items or pick them up from the ground, but it can still receive items from another container, like another hopper. Then, once the top hopper starts picking up amethyst and the amethyst counter in the top hopper increases to 42, The redstone comparator sitting at the back will give a slightly stronger output than when there were only 41 amethysts sitting in the first slot. Just enough to power on the third piece of redstone dust at the very back here, which in turn activates the repeater, whose strong signal disables the redstone torch and thereby unlocks both hoppers, allowing the amethyst that was just collected to pass on into the chest. And it's only the amethyst that's passed on, as hoppers are programmed to always start extracting from their far left slot first. And none of the dirt will be passed on anyway, as once all the extra amethyst that was put in has passed the chain and the amethyst counter in the top hopper returns back to 41, the signal from the comparator is no longer strong enough to keep powering the third piece of redstone, resulting in that piece powering off, the repeater powering off, and the redstone torch powering back on, which locks both hoppers again and returns the system back to how it was at the start. That may have been a really confusing and contrived explanation of how this worked, but hey, that's why you're here, right? Now that I've done my research, I could probably do an entire video on just the mechanics of hopper sorting alone, but this is about the quickest I am able to explain it, whilst still being thorough. But now you understand, right? The hopper is an incredibly complex block worthy of being on this list, and if you know the ins and outs of its mechanics, you can build some incredibly useful things. Number 4. Pressure plates. So, after that incredibly deep lecture on hoppers, it might be time for something a bit simpler. Still complex, but just not as complex as the hopper mechanics we just discussed. So, pressure plates. There's 4 broad types of them in the game, with names that seem to suggest a mechanical difference between them. So, what is the difference between them? Well, let's start with the wooden pressure plate, since those are the simplest, as you may expect. When they detect an entity or item, they give off a redstone signal with a strength of 15, which is a pretty standard output for a redstone component. Stone pressure plates then function largely the same as the wooden ones, with the one exception being that stone pressure plates can only detect mobs standing on them, not items. Next, the golden pressure plate, which the game calls the light-weighted pressure plate, but I'm just gonna call it the golden pressure plate, again detects all mobs and items on top of it, just like the wooden pressure plates. However, the light-weighted pressure plate doesn't put out a redstone signal with a flat power of 15. The strength of its output is dependent on how many entities are sitting up on the pressure plate. Each time an additional entity gets added, the strength of its output is increased by 1 up to a maximum of 15. And lastly, the iron pressure plate, aka the heavy-weighted pressure plate, functions just like a golden pressure plate, but instead of increasing the strength of its output by 1 every time 1 additional entity stands on it, with an iron pressure plate that will only happen when 10 additional entities sit on top of it, essentially regulating the strength of its output in groups of 10 mobs or items. This is all very interesting to me, as even though I've never really used pressure plates, I could see some potential uses for the differing properties of the pressure plates. Like, imagine you've built a mob farm and are looking for a more sophisticated way of killing the mobs rather than just letting them fall to their deaths. You could design a redstone system to kill them with pistons or deploying lava or something, with the wooden and stone pressure plates just killing all the mobs one by one. However, you could also use a golden pressure plate and tailor the system in such a way that it kills the mobs in batches of up to 15. Or you can even kill them in batches of more than 15 if you use the iron pressure plate, allowing you to kill mobs in groups of 10, 20, or maybe even 30 if the crowding limit allows for that. Having examined the specifics of these pressure plates is actually making me think that their different applications might be underexplored, and that people should incorporate their talent into more of their redstone builds, which is something I did not expect to be saying when I started working on this video. Number 3. The redstone comparator. The redstone comparator might be quite a difficult block to understand when you first start the game, However, because of its complexity, it's also among the most useful redstone components in the game, in my opinion at least. Let's get into the basics. When a comparator is placed next to a container, like a chest, barrel or hopper, it measures how full that container is and then outputs a redstone signal whose strength is dependent on how full the container associated with the comparator is. It can even be used to measure more obscure things, such as how much honey is inside a beehive or on which page a book on a lectern stand is currently on. We already saw a little bit of the comparator in our automated storage system, where the increased strength it gave off was the catalyst for the entire system to start working, and the reduced strength of the comparator when all the additional amethyst had passed through returned the system to its inactive state. This is mainly what a comparator is used for in redstone contraptions, measuring how full a certain container is and outputting a signal which can then be used to spark other redstone components. This can be used for storage and even traps from time to time. However, the redstone comparator also has some hidden features, similar to the hopper. However, unlike the hopper, I don't think I've ever seen a concrete example of these features being used in a redstone contraption. Left-clicking on a redstone comparator activates what's known as subtractor mode. You see, the redstone comparator can itself receive a redstone signal from either the front, left or right, with its own output coming out the back. The wiki calls this the front of the block, but I think my way makes more sense. However, if it receives a redstone signal from the front and one or both sides simultaneously, peculiar things start to happen. In normal comparator mode, so with the torch on the back disabled, the comparator compares the strength of the redstone signal it receives on both or all sides. If the strength of the redstone signal it receives from either side is stronger than the signal it receives from the front, the comparator turns off and won't give an output. But in subtractor mode, the comparator will actually subtract the strength of the redstone signal it receives on either side from the strength of the signal it receives from the front, and then output a redstone signal with a strength of whatever the result is. If it receives a signal from both left and right, it'll work with the strongest signal out of the two, and if the signal coming from left or right is stronger than the signal it receives from the front, the comparator will still shut off, just like in normal mode. Once again, I don't think I've ever seen a concrete example of this being used. To me, this is one of those features that has so much potential, but it's just so complex and specific that I can't even imagine a use case for it. Who knows? The people making fully fledged computers in Minecraft are probably the ones who are using these features on a daily basis or something. Regardless, definitely very interesting. Number 2. The calibrated skulk sensor. Ah yes, this block that was brought into the game with the latest update. The block that very few people seem to understand, myself among them. Before making this video at least. So most of you probably know the normal skulk sensor, right? That one has been in the game for a little longer and is pretty simple in how it works. If you make a loud noise in its vicinity, it will activate and send out a sound-based signal to blocks in the surrounding area. If there is a skulk shrieker standing near the skulk sensor, it will get activated by the sensor and you would be better off getting the hell out of there in this moment. Now, the calibrated skulk sensor differs in only one truly noteworthy way, actually, being that the calibrated skulk sensor can pick up sounds from twice as far as the normal sensor. You can also disable the calibrated sensors by feeding a redstone signal into its crystallized side, which is nice, also, I guess. Anyway, both the normal and calibrated skulk sensors can produce a redstone signal when they detect a sound. The strength of the redstone signal that the sensors give off corresponds to the volume of the sound they pick up. So entities just walking around are going to produce a very weak signal, but loud sounds like deaths and explosions are going to produce a strong signal. So using this mechanic, you can make sound-based redstone contraptions, something that was never possible before. For example, lights that only turn on when someone is in the area, or even working telephones are some of the things people have cooked up with these blocks. Me personally, I've never really used these blocks for much of anything redstone related, but I do admit that opening up a whole new division of redstone contraptions using sound is pretty exciting if they plan to expand upon it further in the future. Number 1. And here we are, the most complex block in Minecraft. What do you think it'll be? Well, let's find out. And there it is, the most complex block of Minecraft. A block that can literally do anything you want and that isn't even in the creative mode inventory. You have to give it to yourself via commands, which I gotta admit, for an item called the command block is pretty smart. Ironically, the most complex block on this list is the one I probably have the least to say about. I mean, where would I even begin to delve into a block that, again, can basically do anything you want? Ever played a Minecraft map? Well, that's probably all powered by a bunch of command blocks. Ever played a multiplayer game server? Probably held together by a crypto mining level of command block power and the owner's sanity, or lack thereof. I guess one thing I could mention is that command blocks are divided into 3 categories. Impulse command blocks, which are the standard ones, execute their command only once when triggered. Chain command blocks can activate their command multiple times each time they are triggered. And lastly, repeat command blocks activate their command automatically every game tick, which is normally about once every 0.05 seconds. Using a bunch of these different types of command blocks in tandem, you can basically influence every aspect of the game. When and where mobs spawn, what they will do once they spawn in, what game mode and game rules are in effect at any given time. Everything you wish for, you can make a reality. You can play gold with a command block, even more than when you're in regular creative mode. There are literally almost no limits to what you can do with a command block, and because of that, it kind of deserves the title of most complex block in Minecraft by default. And that's gonna be my video on the most complex blocks of Minecraft. If you enjoyed it and want to show that support, then make sure you do, either by liking, subscribing, commenting. I don't care what you do, as long as it makes us both happy. Thank you for watching as well. And yeah, if you're new, stick around, and I hope to see you in a good mood in a future video. Goodbye.